Utah at Washington. Washington, a 9.5-point favorite in the DraftKings Sportsbook. The over-under set at 51. And I just laid it out. Washington, we know their scenario. Win out and they're in. Utah right now, they need some help to get to the Pac-12 championship game. I think all things considered, Utah's actually doing about as well as you could expect with a third-string quarterback for the entire year. They're sitting right now overall at 7-2 overall. But they need some help to get to the Pac-12 championship game. They obviously would have a tiebreaker over USC if USC is somehow in position, but they also fall behind Oregon because Oregon, of course, took care of them pretty heartily. So Utah, very interesting position. Washington, we know what they got to do. They got to win out. And the cool thing about this game, again, this is the fun part of being in week 10, week 11, week 12. You know these teams, you know who they are, you know their strengths, you know their weaknesses. We don't have to spend a ton of time breaking it down. Washington with elite offense, Utah with elite defense. Now, from the Washington perspective, a couple things stand out from last week with USC. One, the offense certainly got going after a couple weeks where they had really struggled against Arizona State, had 0 offensive touchdowns against Arizona State, took care of business against Stanford, but that was a game that was very close going into the fourth quarter before they pulled away. Well, nothing to get you right on offense like going up against USC's defense under Alex Grinch, 52 points. But the big story was the balance that they had in that game, running the football. Everybody knows the stats by now, but Dylan Johnson had a record-setting night, 256 yards of rushing offense for him. Overall, over 300 yards rushing. I believe the stat on Dylan Johnson was 190 yards before contact. He was getting 6 yards a pop before anybody touched him. So great effort from them on offense. There was something that stood out to me, though. Everybody sat there all Saturday night into Sunday. Oh, USC, their defense is so terrible. It's and it was really bad. How come nobody talked about the fact that Washington's defense isn't very good either? And that's my thought coming into this game. Washington, Oregon is a complete team, right? Like Washington beat Oregon, but Oregon plays on both sides of the football. Washington was just better that day. Washington has not been good on defense all year, 102nd nationally in total defense. Now, I don't know if it'll matter against Utah. Utah is the exact opposite. Utah, this is yin and yang to the extreme in this game. Utah, of course, great defense. Credit to Kyle Whittingham. They're the same team every year, not too hot, not too cold. Stay confident, fundamentally sound, all that good stuff. Overall, second best defense in the Pac-12 in terms of total defense, behind only UCLA. I take that they're actually the top defense ahead of UCLA. UCLA is number 1 rush defense, Utah number 2. One thing that concerns me a little bit going into this game, the Utah pass defense has been phenomenal. So if you're Washington and you're just banking on Michael Penix bouncing back, Utah has the number 1 pass defense in the Pac-12, allowing just 201 yards per game through the air. And also think it's worth noting 8 interceptions, which is tied for the second most in this league. Only UCLA has more. And so as we start to look at this game, I think this is a very simple, who do you trust more? Do you trust Washington's offense? Do you trust Utah's defense? Do you believe that Utah can score enough points to make this interesting? It's an interesting matchup. The game is in Seattle. It's a 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 kickoff type game. My hunch is that I lean Washington, but I don't feel good about it. This is one, I always say on this college football betting show, I don't pick games that I don't believe in and that I'm not betting myself. This is one I can't pick, because on the one hand, if Washington breaks a couple big plays and they got the receivers to do it, the skill position guys to do it, the run game's coming along, it could be 17-3 before anybody blinks and the game's over. We saw that when Utah played Oregon a few weeks ago. Oregon just busted a few big plays. Utah doesn't have the dudes to kind of keep up. But at the same time, I do wonder a couple things. One, Washington's offense has not been great the last couple weeks. Last week, they did have over 500 yards of total offense. That was thanks to the USC defense. But the previous 3 weeks, we talked about it. They were outgained by Stanford. They won. Outgained by Arizona State. They won. Outgained by Oregon. And they won. And I know that there's like trends. I think, who is it? Maybe the Philadelphia Eagles. There's somebody in the NFL that's constantly outgained and still finds ways to win games. I don't know if you can keep doing that at the college level, especially when your defense isn't good. Now, it's one thing if like your defense is elite and your offense is kind of up and down, but their defense has been susceptible to big plays, big games, like I know Utah's quarterbacks are not on the equivalent of Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, but at the same time, they have given up a lot of big plays, a lot of yards, a lot of points over the last month. And I do think at some point it catches up with them. So ultimately, this is a total stay away. I could see the scenario where Washington plays really well. If I had to lean, probably take Utah plus the points. The other thing that I think is at least worth noting, Michael Penix has been very good. I don't think he's been like elite over the last couple weeks. Go back to his last couple games, okay? Last week, he was great. That was very much aided by the run game being awesome. Week before, 21 of 37 against Stanford. Now, he did have 4 touchdown passes, but that's 57% completion percentage. 27 of 42, 64% against Arizona State. And then Oregon, he had under 60% completion percentage as well. So he's been a little bit up and down. I still think Washington finds a way to win this game, but I'll go back on what I said about the Oregon game a few minutes ago. This is the time of year weird stuff ends up happening. My hunch is Washington wins. But I mean, would it surprise anybody if Utah goes to Washington and ends up winning this game? Talk about a chaotic situation that would cause, and certainly it would obviously set up even more stakes for Washington the rest of the year. Not going to pick it, but I would lean Utah covering the points.